Welcome to The Way Home with Laura Smith, the show that brings you wonderful guests, helpful advice, and uplifting stories. The Way Home. Live inspired. Here's your host, Laura Smith.
I can remember getting paychecks for years and years and years from a company called ADP. And I bet millions of people listening to this station can also attest to the same thing. We have someone with us here that's going to talk about something that really is the heartbeat of this country, the American small business. And the statistics are staggering. I didn't realize that small businesses make up most of the businesses in the country and probably in the world. Aaron Stark is here. He is the General Manager and Vice President of Small Business Services at ADP. Aaron, thank you so much.
Thanks for having me, Laura.
So I love the idea of small businesses and I love talking to people about it, but I guess I didn't know that small businesses were as large as up to 500 people working there. So that's the definition, right? You go from small business to then corporation.
Yeah, small businesses are defined differently from whether it's being viewed by the Department of Labor or depending on the organization. We here at ADP actually view our small business clients from 1 employee upwards of 50 employees, and then our mid-market space gets more into that 500. But that S&B, that small, medium-sized business community, usually is defined the way that you had just described it.
Yes. And I know that the beginning of May was actually Small Business Week. And I always loved that. When I lived in New York, I would help celebrate by going shopping on Small Business Saturday and then all week long. And now that I'm here in Northern Indiana, I try to do the same thing because to me, there is nothing more important to the vibrancy of any downtown, of any community than the beautiful small businesses that are run by our neighbors, basically.
For sure. 46% of our labor force is employed by the small business community. 61 million employees.
Wow. And so, okay, there's so much going on. And the new administration is saying that he is much more focused on Main Street than Wall Street. So that bodes well for people in small businesses. And I would imagine 5 years after COVID that we're going into at this point. How is the health of the small business right now? Are we doing well? Are they doing well?
Yeah, there's definitely a lot of different reports that come out in the news, different headlines that can point in one direction versus another. One of the areas that we see here at ADP is in new business formations, and they are still well above pre-pandemic levels. We're seeing upwards of 500,000 new business formations every single year for the past couple of years, which we think is a really good bellwether for the small business community. And when we talk to our clients right now, a lot of them are focused around 3 different things to help their businesses thrive. What technology can help our business enable, new profitability, and make our organization more efficient. From a talent standpoint, how do I find the right people and how do I keep them? And from a compliance perspective, how do I make sure that I am insulating myself from risk, but also what opportunities are out there from a legislative standpoint that could actually help my business? And those are the conversations that we see a lot today from an ADP standpoint.
I can imagine. And what would you say right now? Do small businesses go through trends in terms of like what's hot and what's not? Or do you see certain types of small businesses opening more now, for example, that maybe weren't here 5 years ago? What is the overall kind of trend in terms of small businesses?
Yeah, so in the spirit of like those 3 areas, call it technology, talent, and compliance, technology is right now, you hear a lot of the buzzwords around AI and Gen AI, which you might see in certain small businesses. A lot of it is when you go on social media, content creation, which is incredible. I've used this story, probably overused it, but I think it's relevant, where my 12-year-old daughter put together a presentation for my wife and I on all the reasons why she should have a dog. And well, we now have a dog, but she did this in the palm of her hand and then actually projected it onto our TV. And it's just amazing what this emerging technology can do. And you see that with small business clients where they're putting together marketing material and websites that previously could cost them fortunes. And now it's at scale, which is incredible. But a lot of it is also maybe the less obvious technology. And how do I just run my business more efficiently? And, we at ADP, we see a lot of clients that are using multiple applications. So, in Indiana, you might have a restaurant that has employees clocking in and clocking out, and then they go to a point of sale system to ring up the respective order for one of their clients, and then that information has to go into an accounting software. Imagine a world where that was all in one application. Imagine a world where those 3, 4, 5 clicks were done with one click. And when it comes to things such as embedded payroll and our time and attendance applications that are now woven together, that's where we see a lot of the small business community taking advantage of emerging technology that can just make them more effective and then enable them to go out there and focus on what they do best, which is running their organization.
Absolutely. And by the way, your daughter is a genius as far as I'm concerned. Absolutely amazing that she has the capacity, the wherewithal to even think as creatively as that and be able to have, these kids, they almost feel like they're born with this mind that goes automatically towards technology, where my generation, no, not so much. So do you see AI taking a big spot within small businesses, or is it more still towards larger corporations that will be putting it to use?
It's a great question. We've historically seen that large organizations tend to be the early adopters. However, there are small businesses out there where they're just born into that environment. They're the Gen Xers and, some of the millennials that, that's just the world in which they know. And they understand that technology potentially better than some others. But I've used this example also where it's about the applicability to your organization. If you're in the tech sector, that might be something that is just natural within your respective domain. But if I'm a plumber, that right now a lot of the work that I'm doing is more of a manual nature, it goes back to what I was mentioning before as far as the back office infrastructure and how I can leverage other technologies that may be powered by AI or use AI, but it's not as obvious, or it's not what you tend to see in the media where it's a robot that's going around and doing the work for you, or speaking to a AI agent that is able to produce that service or good for the organization. And that's where we get excited here at ADP, is that there's different flavors that we can offer, whether or not it's, you like in our payroll application as a small business owner, that might not be your domain. Most people didn't wake up on a Tuesday when they were creating their business to be payroll or HR experts. But now you can actually go into our application and into our search bar and start to ask questions where AI is behind the scenes taking your natural language and the way that you would ask a question, which most likely is not in the payroll language, and interpret and then use our domain expertise to understand what you're saying, and then codify that information and provide it back to the small business owner in the way in which they could digest it, where now all of a sudden you've actually become a payroll expert. And it's because you're leveraging technologies that also are powered by AI to go out there and run your business and get your payroll done, so I can focus on what I do best.
Yes. And, in some ways, that kind of stuff used to scare me. But now it just kind of feels like it opens up all the possibilities in the world and can serve to be more efficient ways of handling everything. And speaking of robots, I'm sure one day we're going to be walking down Main Street and we might come across a robot store, and that might be the trend then. But I take heart that there is all of this available to small business owners, because it's hard. I've been a small business owner myself, and it's not easy, getting everything up and running and efficiently and everything else. And I'm glad that there are places where small business owners can go to get support like that. What's a fabulous website that we can go to get more information? Because you're full of really good information, and I know a lot of people listening are going to want to know.
Yeah, I appreciate that. So if you go to adp.com/grit and wisdom, that's GRIT and wisdom, WISDOM. If you go to that website, what's interesting about that link is we also ran a campaign recently where we asked small businesses to provide us with some of their best practices and tips and tricks on what has made their organization successful. So outside of more information on some of the resources that you and I discussed, Laura, there's also 18,000 small business clients that gave some of their insight that we call the Grit and Wisdom campaign. That's also available on that link too.
I love that. Humanizes the whole thing. That's adp.com/grit /grit and wisdom. A beautiful way to look at what small businesses really embody. Thank you so much. Aaron Stark, you're the lead at ADP Small Business Service Operations. Thank you so much for being with us today. The future looks bright, that's for sure.
For sure. Thanks so much for having me, Laura. You have a great day.
Hi, here's a minute of purpose, improving your life 60 seconds at a time. There's a saying that goes, you can't pour from an empty cup. That's why self-care is more important than ever before. Don't say you're too busy. A little time out will make you healthier and more productive. Here are some fun ways to do a self-care day. Start by getting out of your quarantine outfit and revisiting clothes that make you feel good. If you like to read, pick up a favorite book or magazine. Just avoid anything that feels work-related. Throw a dance party in your living room, revisiting your favorite songs, or create a movie marathon with titles that make you smile. Nature is always a good remedy for what ails you, so take a walk. On that note, disconnect from the screens and just take in what's going on around you. The point of taking time for yourself is to bring you back to your world, refreshed and ready. So plan your next self-care day and refill your cup. This has been your Minute of Purpose. Find more now at nowwithpurpose.com.
You're listening to The Way Home with Laura Smith. Once again, here's Laura.
Well, according to research provided by the American Cancer Society, more than 2 million Americans are going to be diagnosed with cancer this year. Thanks to earlier detection, though, and innovations and new treatments, cancer mortality rates are falling, which is great news. But what they have found is there's a lot more discovered in early onset cancer diagnoses. So we want to hear about this and if there are any advancements in treatment and detection. Mohit Monrao is the Senior Vice President of U.S. Oncology at AstraZeneca. And Mohit, thank you so much for joining us. Is it alarming to you that it seems like some of the cancers are being detected in a younger age now, 50 and under?
Hi, Laura. Thank you for having me. And yes, it's alarming to see that there are 14 different cancer types whose incidence is increasing for people under age 40. And generally, when we think about early onset, we're talking about cancers that used to be happening in older adults that now start to happen in people under the age of 50. While that's alarming, on the other hand, it's also great to see the progress we are making in early detection, personalized medicine, and the options of treatments that are available to people. But we've got our work cut ahead of us in terms of ensuring we take the most advantage of that to deal with this huge burden on the society, which is cancer.
Absolutely. Can you tell us a little bit about what you think may be causing this early onset cancer, or is it you don't know yet?
Yeah, so there's constant research that's happening in terms of understanding what the drivers are. There is definitely a role that environment plays and exposure of different elements in the environment, whether it is pollution, whether it is smoke, etc. But there's also elements of lifestyle, and then there are genetic elements too. So there's a multitude of elements that could be constituting this increase in early onset of cancers. Having said that, while we focus on that, there's also a parallel focus we can do is where we see that the cancers that are increasing in younger populations, there are screenings available for many of those cancers. For example, breast and colorectal. We could actually help educate people about staying on top of the understanding of the risk factors, their personal risk factors, as well as understanding what screenings they may be eligible for to stay ahead of this. So we can actually work in parallel on both understanding why it happens, but also dealing with it on the other side through proactive early screening.
Yes, I heard that. Like kind of in my time, it was, 50 or older, you start checking for maybe colorectal and things like that. But now they're saying as early as 40 for some of these, including breast cancer, to start getting these screenings earlier. Is that something you recommend?
Yeah, so yes, Laura, absolutely. There is a central USPSTF guidelines which look at for different cancers when and who should be screened. So that's something we should all follow. Today, actually, 2/3 of the country, 65% of Americans are not up to date with that. So we have to educate people about understanding that. And that's something we can get ahead of, especially for breast, colorectal, and these cancers, which are screenable in the younger populations too.
Absolutely. And is there hope for the detection in younger population? Are there some therapies and some different ways of mitigating the cancer that you're feeling hopeful about?
Yeah, so if we think about once we can find cancer, it's important to develop personalized treatments for that. So understanding the biology of what drives the cancer, finding the right diagnostics to tailor the treatments to. So we have moved away from one size fits all treatments to personalized treatments, and that's where the science is progressing. And at AstraZeneca, we have a bold ambition and vision to eliminate cancer as a cause of death. And every scientific progress we make, combined with the broader screening that we can drive, we feel that we are able to get closer to that ambition and vision as we progress. So it's exciting times from that perspective, but there is still a lot of work to be done.
That's very hopeful. Can you give us maybe perhaps a website to go to where we can get more information to share with others and people we love?
Yeah, first and foremost, I would remind your listeners that if you have any concerns about your health, the best way to seek advice is to talk to your healthcare professional, the doctor you see on annual basis or who's your general practitioner. It is important to stay up to date with screening, and your doctor can help you educate that. There is government websites, USPSTF websites you can go to, and there are many ways to learn. But the best point is to start with your physician whom you can share your family history with, whom you can share what you know today, but they can also help you educate on what screenings you may be eligible for. I would also use the same opportunity, Laura, to tell your listeners that today, where we stand, cancer is screenable, detectable, treatable, and survivable. But we need to take steps in terms of ensuring we outsmart cancer by getting ahead in terms of our screening as well as our treatments.
That is great news, and I'm so thankful that you came on today. Mohit Monroe, Senior Vice President of U.S. Oncology at AstraZeneca. Thank you for the words of wisdom and absolutely for educating my listeners today on what they should be, looking for in terms of don't wait for your screenings. It's helpful and helps to prevent as well. Thank you so much for coming on the program today.
Thank you.
You're listening to The Way Home with Laura Smith. Once again, here's Laura.
Well, we just endured what is that time of year when we all have to get out our checkbooks and probably write a check or two to the IRS. And it's just, something that, we endure, we get through. However, there are so many things about taxes I don't know, and I've learned a lot this past couple of years. I've had some issues myself, and I had to go to a tax professional to find out. Well, H&R Block has been in that business for a very long time, and I have someone with me today, Alison Flores, who leads a tax team at H&R Block. She's manager with the Tax Institute at H&R Block. So thanks for joining us today, Alison. We have something to talk about when it comes to natural disasters and taxes. I didn't even know the two went together.
That's right. So I hope no one here today has to experience a disaster. But if you do, there's a few things you should know to help financially prepare for the disaster and to get ready to understand the tax impacts. So the first thing we want to do is make sure you have your records. So we need to prepare a secure backup location. For many of us, that'll be a cloud-based solution. For others of us, it may be that old safety deposit box or a product that's fireproof and water safe and the whole bit. Second thing you're going to do is gather all those financial records. If you're a homeowner, you'll have your mortgage papers, your closing disclosure statement, your homeowner's insurance packets. So we need all that. You'll also want your financial records that you can access if you did experience a disaster situation, as well as your contact information. And we do recommend last year's tax return as well. So you'll have that all stored away. The other thing that's really important to do is to document your valuables in your assets. So if you're a homeowner, what we want to do is walk around your house, take pictures of each room of your house, go up in the attic, go down to the basement, in the furnace room, and then walk around your home and either take a video or take pictures. And what you're doing is you're documenting how your home looks, what's inside it, the assets you have. So you may be able to say, oh, I have landscaping, I have a perimeter fence. And that helps you remember what you have and also document the value and condition of your assets if you were to experience a disaster.
I had never thought of that. That's really interesting. And you're talking about, when you're talking about creating this sort of packet with all of your information in it and your documents, is if you don't have a cloud and you talk about a safety deposit box, you're talking about off premises in case something happens to your home.
Absolutely. So some of the disasters we've experienced lately, hurricanes, flooding, wildfires, can essentially destroy a home and its contents very quickly. So what we're looking for is an off assets or off premises location that is secure. These are financial records, so you want to make sure it is a secure place.
I see. Wonderful to know. And what else would we have to be mindful of besides sort of photographing and journaling everything that we have in our asset class, basically?
Absolutely. So if you do have receipts, and I know for a lot of larger projects, you'll have receipts, but you want to keep a list of the major upgrades if you've replaced the HVAC system. It's handy to have a list of all those projects that you've completed so you can remember what you've done over the years and who the vendor was and the receipt if possible, that type of thing. So if you were unfortunately in a disaster, the next step is to start assessing the damage. So one of the first steps would be to contact your insurance, contact your homeowners, contact your vehicle insurance. They'll start the claims process for you. But again, you're going to want to document everything. So as you have expenses to repair or replace items, you'll document that. You'll also want to document the condition of the home when you're able to get in safely. So sometimes you're not able to safely document the inside, but you do want to document as much as you can. Again, take the pictures, take the video, get your phone, and document what's there. And this will help you have records that substantiate your loss, that show how much damage you sustained as a result of this disaster experience. The other thing to remember is there may be a need for temporary living expenses. You may have non-taxable disaster assistance for meals or lodging temporarily after a disaster, or you may be looking at disaster benefits from an employer plan, or possibly taking a 401k distribution for a disaster. So those are some things you're going to look at in that assessment process. What are your options and how much is the disaster? The next thing go ahead.
No, go ahead. I thought that that is amazing. I feel like I'm hearing some information that I probably should have known all along, but go ahead.
Right. So the next thing we're going to do is you go through that replacement repair. We already talked about managing those receipts. You'll be working with your insurance company, and they may cover all of your losses fully, or there may be a shortfall. So if there is a shortfall where the insurance doesn't cover all of your loss, that's where taxes come in. So you may be able to claim a disaster loss on your taxes if your insurance doesn't fully cover your losses. Many people prefer to work with a tax professional on this. There's some special calculations and a provision that may allow you to claim that loss on your prior year return, which is helpful. For example, if you have a loss now this summer, you may be looking at amending last year's return to claim a loss once you have all your records in place. So that's really important. The other thing that comes up with taxes is oftentimes you'll get an extension of time to file and to pay your taxes. So right now we have several locations in the country that are on disaster extensions. Los Angeles County in California is on a disaster extension until October 15 for this year's taxes. So a lot of times that's something you'll want to find out. Do I have more time to file? Do I have more time to pay? And that'll help you manage your payments and your records and the tasks that you have to do when you're so busy rebuilding from a disaster.
So incredible, the information, and can really help somebody. I had my house caught on fire when I first moved here, when it was during a renovation. I do understand we think that these things will never happen to us, but lo and behold, once in a while they could and would. So we want to be prepared. You've been a real blessing today with this information. Where can we find more? Where can people go to for a recap besides listening to the podcast again, to any information that you can provide?
Absolutely. I would visit hrblock.com for more information about special disaster relief and to connect with a tax expert in your area if you'd like some help.
Thank you so much. Alison Flores, who leads a tax team responsible for developing and managing tax content for individuals, and she's a manager with the Tax Institute at H&R Block. Thank you so much for joining us today on the way home.
Thank you. Have a good day.
Thank you all, and thank you all for listening to The Way Home this week and to my wonderful guests. And may you all have a wonderful week that is safe, that's happy, healthy, and full of lots of miracles as well. I'm Laura Smith. See you next time from The Way Home.
Podcasts by Federated Media.